just welcome, just to say that I've literally just come off retreat. In fact, actually, I came off retreat and stepped into samsara. A friend of mine who's really, I actually ordained them, and so we always connect while I'm here. And she said, you know, it's a friend's birthday, just we pop into there. And it was this in the Italian area in a saloon, and it was just like the smell of alcohol, loud music, dark. And I was like, oh my God, I'll wait for you outside. This is samsara. This is samsara at the moment. Anything can be samsara. I made it samsara. It didn't have to be samsara. But anyway, wonderful to have you here. Thank you for those of you who are here in person, and thank you for those of you who are here on the flat screen. So I thought it would be really nice to begin with a practice. We're going to begin with a practice just called love. Those of you who are familiar with my work will know that I like working with mnemonics. So LOVE, each letter stands for something. So yeah. So let's just allow ourselves to arrive. Really see if you can just arrive into the body. Just as the body arrives onto the seat, have the sense of your body arriving onto your seat. And then having the sense of your mind arriving into your heart. Love, love. L stands for liking or loving an aspect of yourself. So I really want every one of you to find something that you like or love about yourself. It could be your smile, it could be the way you dress, it could be your hair, it could be your culture, just something. Every one of you here who's here must like something about yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here giving yourself a gift. So just take this moment to really connect with something that you like and love about yourself, and see what that feels like in the body. Notice sensations. Whenever we do a practice of love or loving kindness, there's this expectation that we're going to feel wonderful and it's going to be so pleasant. Actually, sometimes when we do these practices of love and self-compassion, it can be experienced as quite painful. Sadness might even arise. And that's normal. Everything is welcome. So just touch into that part that likes and loves yourself, and just notice what that feels like in the body. O, the O stands for own your uniqueness. We are all unique. Not even identical twins are exactly the same. So just own your uniqueness. Own it. Yeah. If you don't own your uniqueness, how can anybody else love your uniqueness? Own your oddities. We're all odd, we're all different. We're so quick to say, oh, that person's neurodivergent, that person's this, but you know what? We're all on the spectrum somewhere. We're all odd, we're all different. That's what makes us beautiful. So own your uniqueness. And again, notice what that feels like in the soma, what it feels like in the body. Notice if there is tension or if there's expansion. Just notice what's going on in the body. V stands for validate, validating your existence. Often we're waiting for others to validate our existence. We're waiting for the approval of others. And actually, we need to validate our own existence. So inviting you to place a hand anywhere on the body, anywhere, and feel the warmth of your hand validating your existence. Touch into the warmth of your own hand, and this is you validating your existence. And breathe. And notice again. Notice what's happening to the nervous system. Notice if that's a threat. The threat, oh my God, I have to validate my existence. Notice. And breathe. So we've come here because title is the first aid kit of the mind, and this is one of the practices in the book. And we're going to work with the mind in this practice. The E stands for extinguish. Yeah, exterminate, extinguish. Going to get rid of some of those, or let go of some of those things that sabotage your happiness, some of those things that sabotage your mental states. And I just want you to bring one or two things, because we can't work with everything, but I want you to bring one or two things that actually get in the way of your happiness. And I want you to thank them, because often these things that sabotage our happiness, that stop us from doing things, they're often things that have protected us. Yeah, they are often things that have protected us. So I just want you to just thank them for a moment before we begin to retire them. You know, in a way, sometimes I think it's just easier to retire, put them into early retirement. And let them know if you need them again, you can bring them out of retirement. But you're going to think about putting them into early retirement. And so I'm going to do this mantra, and I want you to continually throw these one or two things onto a fire and just let them burn into nothingness. And really see if you can let go. And just know it's something that we have to keep on letting go. These rituals do work if we keep on letting go. So it could be a habit, it could be an addictive habit, but just something, but not something huge. And this mantra, you're going to hear me do a ha, 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 ha. And that is the laughter. It's the laughter of actually realizing nothing has ever been wrong with me. I've always been okay. I've never been impure. I've always been pure. There's been nothing wrong with me. And it's a realization that nothing has ever been wrong with me. And at the end, we hear an ahum pat, away with evil. So I'm going to do the Vajrasattva mantra, which is a purification of the mind. And maybe if some of you know this mantra, you can join in with me as I do this mantra. But as I'm doing this mantra, have the sense of letting go, putting this stuff onto the fire, so you can begin to put them into retirement and thank them. Thank you, and I don't need you anymore. Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya Vajrasattva Venopatishta Thredho Me Bhava Sutosho Me Bhava Suposho Me Bhava Anarakto Me Bhava Sarva siddhi me precha, sarva karma sucha me, shitam shreya kuruhung, ha 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 ha. Nothing has ever been wrong with me. I've always been okay. I've never been impure. I am pure. Ha 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 ha. Bhagava Sota Bhagata, Vadra me muncha, Vadri Bhava, Mamahatsam Yatsafa, Ahum Pat, Vadra Sappha Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vadra Sappho Venopatishta, Threadho me bhava, Sutosho me bhava, Suposho me bhava, Anarakto me bhava, Sava siddhi me precha, Sava karma sucha me, Shitam shreya kuruhung, ha 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 ho, Bhagava Sota Bhagata, Vadra me muncha, Vadri bhava, Mamahatsam yatsafa, Ahum Pat, Vadra Sappha Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vadra Sappho Venopatishta, Threadho me bhava, Sutosho me bhava, Suposho me bhava, Anarakto me bhava, Sava siddhi me precha, Sava karma sucha me, Shitam shreya kuruhung, ha 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 ha, Bhagava Sota Bhagata, Vadra me muncha, Vadri bhava, Mamahatsam yatsatva, Ahum Pat, away with evil. Vadra Sappha Samaya, Manu Palaya, Vadra Sappha Venopatishta, Threadho me bhava, Sutosho me bhava, Suposho me bhava, Anarakto me bhava, Sava siddhi me precha, Sava karma sucha me, Shitan shreya kuruhung, ha 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 ha. I've never ever been wrong. Nothing has ever been wrong with me. I've never been impure. I'm always pure. I am okay. Ha 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 ho. Bhagava Sota Bhagata, Vadra me muncha, Vadri bhava, Mamahatsam yatsatva, Ahum Pat. Let it go. Let it go. And the E also stands for embrace this precious moment. Embrace it. And you know, there may be something still hovering around. Just tell it to relax. Tell it to step back so that you can have this moment, this precious moment, this moment of now, so you can have this moment of peace. Yeah. Because these things sabotage our peace. These things play tricks with our minds. So just ask it to step back, to relax, so you can have a moment of freedom. This is freedom when we can let go. Freedom in letting go. Love, love, love. Liking an aspect or loving an aspect of the self. Owning your uniqueness. Validating your existence. And embracing this precious moment. This moment of freedom. Love, 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 love. We just end with regulating the system a bit. It's a strong practice, the Vajrasattva mantra. So I want you to have the sense of perhaps you're drinking through a straw. So purse your lips. And as you're drinking through a straw, and you're just going to breathe in. And breathe out through the straw. And do that several times. And for those of you perhaps that might be activating, you can just actually just take hold of your hands and just lightly touch your hands. And just touch your hands just to regulate the system a bit. Gently reconnecting. What I would say to you is that you were, who knows what happened to you when you were in the womb. Sometimes we come out completely dysregulated. But what I do know is before you did some of these things that you find hard to come to peace with, that actually, that you most probably experience some kind of trauma, okay? And you're not responsible for that. And what I would say is it's the story of Angulimala. Yeah, Angulimala, that means the garlanded one. And it said what happened is that Angulimala was the favorite student of a teacher, and this teacher really loved him. And yet, of course, because he was a favorite, the other students were jealous. It's like, why are you favoring this person? And so they wanted to get back. They wanted to get back at this student, this favorite student. And so they told the teacher that he was having an affair with his wife. And so, of course, the teacher was enraged and banished him and said, the only way I can forgive you if you come back with 100 fingers around your neck. You have to murder 100 people, okay? Sometimes people say it's 1,000, but we just keep it to 100 because it'll be a pretty big necklace to have 1,000 fingers around your neck. So, of course, and that's where he got his name Angulimala, but he was beside himself because he loved his teacher and he would do everything for his teacher. And so he goes out into the woods and he starts murdering all these people. And, word gets around, don't go through the forest, don't go through the woods because Angulimala is out there. And anyway, it gets to the point that he's got 99 fingers. And his mother hears that the Buddha is going to be going through the forest along that path, and she's like beside herself because you don't kill a Buddha. Yeah. And she really wants to warn him. And anyway, so what happens is, Angulimala, he's in the forest and he sees this person walking in the forest and he thinks, that's it. I'm going to get that last one and I'm going to be able to go back to my teacher and he's going to love me. And as he starts following this teacher, as he starts following this person, the person is moving quicker. So he starts moving quicker and the person is moving quicker. And in the end, Angulimala says, stop. And the person turned around to him and said, I have stopped. You need to stop. And that's such a strong teaching. It was the Buddha. It's like, I have stopped. So in this story, the Buddha had a past life and he had stopped. We all have to stop somewhere. And Angulimala did stop. However, although he stopped, it wasn't that the people in his village forgave him. People still threw rocks at him. He still had to take the consequences of his actions, but he had stopped. And it said that actually he went for refuge and he woke up to the truth. And yet, of course, because he had murdered all these people, there were going to be people who were going to be really angry with them. But yet he was able to forgive himself. He stopped. And in a way, can you just say to yourself, I've stopped? Yeah. And there may be people who are still angry with you, and that's their work. It's their work. We can't do anything about that. You know, there are times when, you know, we're in this conflict. We've had this conflict, and, you know, maybe we've done something to somebody and we've had remorse and we want to apologize, and the person is still really angry. You know, here's another story. Friend of mine, and this is a friend of mine, he was invited to give a talk on this panel. And he realized when he saw the names of the people on the panel, he realized that there was somebody on the panel who he was really angry with and had been angry with him for about 5 years. So anyway, they get to the conference and are on the panel, and they do the panel. And, you know, this friend of mine had his moment. He said, well, you know, I really need to speak to this person. So he says to this person, you know, can I have a word with you? And the person said, sure. And he said to him, I've been really angry with you for the past 5 years. And the person said, oh, I didn't feel it. So again, it's like, actually, we're the ones, we have to work with that anger towards ourselves and the anger towards somebody else. So again, what I want to say to you is I really hear how it's hard. And yet, remember, when you have stopped, you have stopped. And you're choosing to do something different. Yeah. And there were many conditions that may be why you did some unskillful things. Yeah. But give yourself a break. This is why some people stay sick. It's an excuse. It's like, oh, my past, and, you know, in the rooms of 12 steps, clearing the wreckage of the past. You know, if I look at my past, how can I stop? And then people continue. It's an excuse. It's like, actually, all of us have done something unskillful, and we can stop, and we can do something different, and we can change the direction of our lives. So thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability. And remember, Angulimala, yeah, the Buddha saw, just teaching, just stop. When are we going to stop? Yeah, it's medicine for the mind. Yeah. I mean, the reason why I asked you that, because you spoke about liberation and freedom, and one of the things in the Dharma is about seeing through that illusion of self, seeing through the fabrication of all those identities. And, you know, it's said that when the prince became awake, it said that they said something like, these labels that identify me as a man, a god, an asura, a deva, a human, have been destroyed by me. And so in a way, that freedom is about beginning to let go of these identities which can fix us. And even if you were in active addiction now, I would say, well, you know, you could be a father, you could be a son. That's not all of you, because sometimes we get fixed on this one part is us that keeps us unwell. So I would say that the Buddhist teachings is the oldest recovery program that we know today. You know, it's said that the first discourse that the Buddha gave, that the Buddha said that there is addiction to hedonism, which is lowly, coarse, and unprofitable. And there is addiction to self-mortification, which is lowly, coarse, and unprofitable. And what we need is the middle way. So already we know that actually that the Buddha was aware that we had addictive tendencies. This is part of the human condition. Yeah. And so how do we begin to liberate ourselves from that? And it's like, you know, I can say, oh, you know, I don't have my addictions, but then I think, like, I joke and I say the new cigarette is a telephone, you know. So you don't smoke, but it's like, that's a new cigarette, you know, everybody there. And it is, yeah, it is an habitual habit. and it can be a matter of life and death when you're walking along the road and a car comes, or you're on the phone, etc. So yeah, but thank you for sharing that. I would say that the monks in Burma, the monks in India have always been dragging people into the temples who have had addictions. Yeah, it is definitely a way out of suffering. That's a really that's a really interesting one. Thank you for that question, because, and I'm not saying that this is you, but often I have people say to me, what can I do when, my partner is trying to let go of their addictions, alcohol, drugs, or whatever it is, sex addiction, whatever it is. Or, my son has an addiction, what can I do? And the first question I will say is, well, do you drink? You know, and then this is how the conversation would go. Is say, do you drink? No, 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 no. I'm not an alcoholic. And I say, no, I'm not asking if you're an alcoholic. I'm just a question. Do you drink? No, 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 no. I'm okay. It's not me. It's my partner or my son. And I say, no, I'm just curious. Do you drink? And in the end, they say yes. I say, oh. So I say, well, you want to know what is the best way to help your partner who perhaps who drinks, or even if they've got the marijuana. I think the best thing you could do would be to stop. Oh, no, 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 but I'm not the addict, I'm not the alcoholic, no, no, no. And I say, well, just imagine how hard it is for you to stop, and you're not the addict, and you want the other person to stop. But I will say that actually, coming back to you, and we're in this circle, so I'm not going to ask you that now, but for you to think about what are some of your addictive behaviors, because often when we're in relationships with someone who's got addictive behaviors, we've often got addictive behaviors too. We have. It could be the food, it could be something. So in a way, how can you support your partner? You can support your partner by working on yourself and really looking at yourself. It's a real opportunity to look at yourself and not to think, oh, separate and other. They're the person with the problem, they're the sick person, and I'm okay, you know? So really, that's what I would say. Often, if it's a parent and a child or whatever, the whole family has to come into recovery, and to actually look at that, look at the intergenerational or the intergenerational trauma that, and how does addictive behaviors play through the family lines. So again, in answer to your question, I would say really look deeply into yourself and think, okay, what are my addictive behaviors that I could be working on too, so that I can actually be more healthier for my partner. That's it. So it's not to say that you've got a big issue, but if we have an addictive, if it's food or if it's alcohol, or if it's marijuana, then our minds are still clouded and we can't be fully present for our partner. So in a way, how can we be fully present for our partner? And we can be fully present for our partner to begin to let go of those habitual behaviors that we have. Okay. I've been reflecting on the four reminders. In January, I was at Joshua Tree retreat center there. I was a teacher in residence there, and so I had a self-led retreat, did some retreat stuff as well. But every day when you walked out of the Zendo, there was this placard. And it's so amazing because you'd say to people, did you see that placard? And they hadn't noticed it. On this placard, literally, it's staring in your face as you leave, as you open the door and leave. So you have to look at it. But the mind is so clever, it chooses what you want to see or not. And the four reminders, so aging, yeah, we can't avoid aging. We can't escape aging. Death will come to us and we can't escape death. Yeah. ill health will come to us and we can't escape ill health. And, you know, I would see that every day. And then I think, what about faculties? The loss of faculties. The loss of faculties would come to us. We can't avoid that. And that was like, okay, like, you know, it's like never used to be in glasses. You know, once upon a time, I loved wearing sunglasses. And then when I had to wear prescription glasses, it was like, oh my God, you know. And then the last question is, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to live your life? That question. How do you want to live the rest of your life from this moment on? And it's something to really reflect on, yeah? Especially those of you who are Dharma practitioners and who have been practicing for a while, and perhaps those of you who've just come. How do you want to live the rest of your life? It's a really important question, yeah? How do you want to live the rest of your life? Yeah. And so again, if we think of the Four Noble Truths, the first one, that there is suffering, and it said there is suffering because we will suffer. It's not that life is suffering, it's we'll suffer because we go into denial around aging. Yeah. I was on retreat and there was a couple of people, you know, who didn't have the same mobility, and to everyone, I said, well, I'm just temporarily abled. You know, I'm temporarily. There have been times when actually I haven't been abled. Yeah. I'm temporarily abled. So again, it's like that we can go so much into denial of aging, of sickness. And even when death comes, I mean, it's the one thing that we know that will happen. And I think one of the ways we can begin to practice, Stephen Levine in his book, Who Dies, would often say in the book that an end of a meal is a mini rehearsal for death. Yeah. And so in a way, we can begin living our life with these mini rehearsals, you know, of renunciation, because we all have to renounce, don't we? You know, it's like we either begin doing it now. Those of you who have addictive behaviors and you've let go of them, that's a form of renunciation. Okay, it is a form of renunciation. Yeah, and we know how hard that is. But how do you want to live your life? Yeah. So, yeah. Do you want some more freedom? Coming back to this first aid kit of the mind, do you want some more freedom? Do you want to be free from what we call that stinking thinking, that papancha, that proliferation of thought? Yeah. And there's a great sutta, I refer to it in the book, and 5 ways to work with distracting thoughts. And it's like, it's called the Vitakatthasana Sutta. And again, it can be, you know, sometimes mindfulness doesn't work. It's like, okay, kind of be mindful of your thoughts, you know, but sometimes that just isn't going to work. One of the favorite ways that I love, what the Buddha says, is imagine wearing a rotting carcass around your neck, and that's your thoughts. Imagine wearing a rotten carcass around your neck. Would you want to wear it? That's your thoughts. Or another way is to think of the consequences of those thoughts. Just think, yeah. I mean, how many of you would be happy for anybody to hear your thoughts? You know? And I tell you, at some point, it's going to happen with all this artificial intelligence. Do you know what I mean? Already, you know, on your telephone, you talk about something and the next thing, it comes up on your phone. So already they've started listening in. But again, you know, how can we? And so I tell you, it's an emergency. This is the time really to become aware of your thoughts, because there's a whole censorship that is happening in this country, no matter what side you are on. There's a whole censorship, yeah. And so really, it's beginning to really begin to think about How do you want to work with your thoughts? And then my favorite one is where the Buddha says, if all else fails, just imagine if it was a huge man who was just crushing this thought. Clench your teeth and just crush it. And I'm telling you, I'll give you an example. There was one day, I'm 62 now, and it was my 50th birthday, and it was on a Dharma night, and I wanted one of the other Dharma teachers to be there, wanted people to be there, and he didn't know whether he was going to be there or not. And so I get there, and I'm leading this ritual, a puja, which is done in call and response. And this one person isn't there. And my mind just kept on like a magnet, and I'm supposed to be doing this ritual, call and response. There's like 30 or 40 people responding, and my mind, and I had to just say, stop. And something shattered. That was that fifth way of working with distracting thoughts, crushing, and something fell apart, and it's never been the same. And I know when I think about it, it was history. Even as a kid, well, you know, a young person, I used to have these huge parties, and my best friend, she would never come. There was always something, and I'd spend the whole night, you know, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, out of my head, but still the whole night, where's my friend? And one day I just thought, look at all these people who are here. Get over it, let it go, but there's still some residue. So this thing of how we can begin to have freedom from our thoughts, freedom from the fear of aging, freedom from the fear of ill health, freedom from the fear of death, okay? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I love it when I listen to Ram Dass, you know, talks about becoming nobody. One of the problems in our life is our project is trying to become somebody. That's our project, of trying to become somebody. And I'm at this point, how can I become nobody? Because this is the project. And it's like, actually, at the end of the day, it's like we leave with nothing. We become nobody, you know? No body, when I break that up, no body. Yeah. I have a practice in the book, so maybe this is a moment for a practice, okay? So the practice is called Rust, and each letter stands for something, and I play with this idea of rust, that the mind can get quite rusty when we're in those kind of obsessive thoughts, yeah? So just want you to just kind of, yeah, perhaps just bring to mind a time when you was hooked, you know, that time when it's like somebody did something, it wasn't big, but you just keep on thinking about it. And we all have those experiences, times when we're hooked. It's like we go over what happened, you know, or something where you're still telling your friend this thing that somebody did, you know, that sometimes it's like a year later, you're still telling the person that this person did that, you know. Oh, thank you for turning your screen on. It's always nice. Thank you. So, so just bring that to mind. And just know that when we're in touch with obsessive thoughts, when we're in touch with this thinking, that actually the R stands for recognize we're being activated. That's all what's going on, is that actually we're being activated. The system, the nervous system has gone into a threat mode, okay? That's all what's happened. There's activation, there's stuff happening in the body, okay? And just recognize that. That's okay, because often what we're doing is we keep in that loop to move away from the discomfort in the body. You know, it's like, that's why we keep on turning away. So the U stands for just understand all that's happening is you're just simply caught in a story. That's all what's happening. And actually, it just may be a familiar story, but just told in a different way. Yeah. And often understand it's an old story. Yeah. It's an old story. Often it's an old story that actually goes back into childhood. Yeah. And understand actually when we're really hooked and we're in that obsessive thinking, often we become younger. Some often understand that actually it's the 7-year-old or the 8-year-old who's being activated right in that moment, rather than the 30 or 40 or 50-year-old or whatever. Yeah. So just understand that. The S stands for sensation. Stretch with sensations, sway with sensations, sing, scream with sensations. The soma, become aware of the body, you know, often just to move the body. I mean, often what we do is we'll most probably go for a cigarette or for a drink or for a piece of food or switch the computer on. But really, if we could just stretch with sensations, sway with sensations, lift the head up, turn the head side to side, yeah? And T stands for trust this too shall pass. And you know what? Maybe it hasn't passed. That's the reality. We hear trust this too shall pass. Well, sometimes, you know what? It hasn't passed. And so what we can do, that T, is to tell it to relax. Tell it to relax. Just ask it if it could just step back for a moment, yeah, and tell it to relax. And so, of course, when we're activated and when a head is being caught, assailed by this obsessive thinking, we're not going to go, oh, sit down and meditate, or let's go through Rust, R-U-S-T. But what you could do is just, call on you. Oh, understand, I'm just caught in a story. That's it. Is it true? I'm just caught in a story. I'm just caught in my head. Or you might just call on the T. Trust this will part. So tell it to relax. Just tell it to relax. Or you might call on the R and recognize being activated. Or you might just call on the S, sensations. Just sensations in the body. Move the body, stretch the body, stand up. And this is the way we can really begin to work with those things that actually assail the mind. Okay? So again, when we are activated, it can be a real threat to the nervous system. And so there are some things physically that we can do. And so one of the things is, it's just like, if you see my hand, there's a pressure point there. So it's like you can just do the pressure point to relax. Or you can do this to relax, this pressure point. There's a really beautiful one, which I find that people find really relaxing. Maybe you're at home, and this wouldn't be when you're really in it. When you're really in it, I'll show you one that you can do with your tongue. And this really works. I'm going to do it because it really works. So you can take hold of your tongue. Put it to the side, yeah. And then These are neurosomatic tools that really work. Okay. And I tell you one more, maybe some of you might want to do it, but so you can do it just with your foot. You just take a sock and just move it just over your foot really gently, and just move it over your foot really, really gently. And you'll find how that will really ground you. Okay. So these are, so again, so I'm giving you some mindfulness tools, but also some practical tools that you can actually do. Because, you know, when we're really activated, we're not going to sit cross-legged and try and meditate. I really feel like actually moving into my 6th decade, something is beginning to shift, and it's again, it's to just keep on doing the work, you know. And what I would say to anybody who has addictive behaviors, work with somebody who's specialized in that area, because they know all the tricks. So I know, like, Buddhist recovery, oh yeah, Buddhist recovery, I'm guilty because, you know, with Paramabandha, we put 8-step recovery together. Buddhist recovery, we get these people coming to Buddhist recovery. And I know sometimes they're avoiding, and I say, you come here, but you go to, you know, if it's alcohol, you go to a meeting where it's alcohol as well. You don't just come here, because there are the tricks that people won't understand. And you really, you know, if you really want to get the recovery, is to work with people who understand disordered eating, okay? And you have the two. And in a way, it's just learning a new way to nourish yourself, really. Because I think all of us, the one behind all of these addictive and habitual behaviors is hungry, that we're hungry. We're hungry for love. We're hungry for nourishment, this hunger. And some of us choose the alcohol, some of us choose the drugs, some of us choose the porn, whatever. Different medicine, but it's still trying to cure that deep thing inside us. You know, and I love one of my favorite stories. You know, again, if you think of the prince and him waking up to the truth, that actually people tend to think, this is the whole thing. It's like people tend to think, oh, we come to meditation, we come to mindfulness, and we're going to feel really good, and it, you know, but actually, it's not. If you look at the prince's enlightenment, it wasn't all fluffy. There are people who are wanting enlightenment, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's a spiritual bypass, wanting the enlightenment. If you go to the prince's story, the prince didn't say or vow, I won't move from this spot until I find enlightenment. What did the prince say? Who knows? Some of you Dharma practitioners, what did the prince say? Not the first thing. That's a good one. Thank you. No, it's good. Yeah, he did want all beings to be enlightened. But what did he say? He vowed not to move from this spot until he found an end of suffering. And that is so different if you think about it. That route, finding an end of suffering. Because if you're going for looking for enlightenment, you're not going to want to face any suffering. To find an end of suffering, you have to face the suffering. Yeah. And that's really hard. But of course we want, and especially, you know, those of us who've had those addictive behaviors, we know, the chasing that high, wanting to feel good like that, you know, but actually this thing of facing an end of suffering. So the prince He came face to face with every possible mental state that you could imagine, even to the point, you could say paranoia, that he actually thought Mara, which is the mind, the king of Mara, was there to kill him, sending arrows to kill him. He really saw that. But actually, there was something where it's like he was able to relax and just see things as they really are, and was able, the story is to change it into beautiful lotus petals. But the thing is, it was like he didn't get hooked into this. It was like Mara sent him these most beautiful daughters, but he didn't avoid and say, oh, it's not there. He just didn't identify with the mind. And that's often what we're doing. We are identifying with the mind. And we do have to come into relationship with the mind. If we think of Dogen, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. So we have to get to know the self, but to study the self is to let go of the self. So the thing is that we never let go, because we identify with these things that happen, and we concrete, and they become permanent, and they become us. And actually the freedom in the mind is when we disidentify. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's easy. And what I am saying is that the less we identify, the more freedom we have. Part of the reason, or part of the reasons why we do this practice is, coming back to, you say, Buddha wanted all of us to wake up, all of us to be enlightened. Well, to do that, we have to become less of our habits. So, when you look at people getting older, often we become more of our habits. Oh, that's it. But that's not the way to enlightenment. It's to become less of our habits. And that's really hard. And we become less of our habits when we stop identifying with these things that keep on arising in the mind, the fabrications of the mind. So, again, coming back to you, how to work with these obsessive thoughts. Sometimes you might have to take medication. Some people think, okay, mindfulness, I should be able to do it for mindfulness, I should be able to do it with the Dharma, I should be able to do it, But actually, sometimes you might need to take medication, and that really is okay. And you'll be mindful with that. You might, and that will be really okay. The only reason why I don't take medication is because I've been practicing since my 20s. That's the only reason why. I really think if I'd started practicing later, I most probably would have. I always say that mindfulness is my Prozac. I keep on practicing, but because I came across meditation and mindfulness, that really, I really do believe that. So you think, I've had 30 years of practicing, but I know if I stopped, it would be different. Yeah. How do we work with these obsessive thoughts, obsessive thinking, and to really be in your tenderness? It's so interesting. Just recently, I was very in touch with the tenderness, and a friend said to me, oh, you're a powerhouse, you're so whatever. I said, I'm in my power, in my tenderness. I'm in my power to just be able to feel. And it is that sadness, it's such a yucky sensation to feel in the body, but yet if we can give it space, it does shift. But our tendency is to move away from it, or to soothe it. And actually the soothing is to be able to be with it. And it's a practice, and there's times when I can really be with it, and there's times when I can't or choose not to be, but getting better. And it's that it's a practice. Well, I'm gonna do a mantra, and just if you, those of you who are in person, if you want to join in at some point. But I think like some of the things that we've been talking about, it can open up stuff. So this mantra is a salve. It's a metta mantra, and it's may all beings be happy, may all beings be well, may all beings be free from the roots and the causes of suffering. You know, and when we're saying be happy, may all beings be joyful. And it's just Sabe Sata Sukhi Hontu. So I'm just going to do the mantra and just really just allow the mantra to really vibrate in the body. It's, you know, sometimes we can be in communication with people and it's like we say, gosh, it was like they slapped me around the face or they kicked me in the gut, because words really do have a vibration. Yeah. And so when we are working with mantras, it's said that they're made from sacred syllables, syllables that actually work from the inside to the outside. And so we know the inside and outside isn't separate. So just, yeah, you might want to hum it to yourself, or you might want to join in and just listen and just really just receive, just receive. Again, when we talk about the Buddha who wanted all beings to be enlightened, we can think of Avalokiteshvara, the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara, which is really great. Avalokiteshvara is seen as the trans bodhisattva, because Avalokiteshvara appears in female form in certain places in the world called Kuan Yin, and in other places in the world appears in male form, so seen as the trans bodhisattva. And so I want you to have the sense of, so yeah, what I'll do is I'll tell the story and then go into the mantra, and we'll end the night like that. So it's said that Avalokiteshvara vowed to his teacher Amitabha that they wouldn't move from the spot until all the people of Tibet were free of suffering. And this was his vow, because he looked over the land of Tibet and saw all these people struggling, and he vowed, you know, I'm going to sit in samadhi until all these people are free from suffering. So Avalokiteshvara sits and goes into samadhi, into deep meditation. At some point, gets a bit curious, gets a bit doubtful, and kind of opens their eyes and looks across the land of Tibet and could see that not even a fraction of their practice had done anything for the suffering. And so that ego kicked in, and in that moment, Avalokiteshvara explodes into a million pieces and cries for Amitabha, their teacher. And Amitabha, with compassion, because it's like, you know, Avalokiteshvara had made that vow, but with compassion, put Avalokiteshvara back together again with 1,000 arms, 11 heads, all seeing, and in these 1,000 arms, an eye in each hand, and also an implement to be able to really work with the suffering of all these beings. And so when Avalokiteshvara is put back together again, there's just this sadness of actually, in a way, are we separate? Are there beings to be saved? And in that moment, in that sadness of thinking, how on earth did they think they could do that on their own? And it's said that from a tear of their eye, a lake emerged and green Tara was born. And that's one of the mythical stories of Avalokiteshvara. And so this isn't Avalokiteshvara's chant, but this is a mantra for all beings. Sabe Sata Sukhi Hontu, Sabe Sata Sukhi hontu sabe sata. 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 Sukhi hontu. May the merit gained in my acting bus go to the alleviation of all beings. My personality throughout my existences and my possessions in all three ways, I let go and let go and let go. May, when you leave this space, may people feel the benefits of your practice today.